This week on Africa Weekly, we meet the black South Africans imprisoned during apartheid who are demanding pardons for their crimes. Then we head to the DRC, where women painting designs on homes are adding colour to a region marred by political unrest. And finally, we get into shape with a South African grandmother who holds the over 80 world half marathon record and shows no sign of slowing down. But first, here's a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. African Union members gathered in Ethiopia for a biannual meeting, with head Moussa Faki criticising member states for a lack of solidarity shown to nations facing famine and drought.
In the face of the terrible tragedy of famine in these regions, what happened to the African values of solidarity and fraternity? What happened to our civil society? What happened with our private sector and our benefactors?
An official declaration of famine in South Sudan was lifted in June after 4 months, though the situation there and in 3 other countries remains desperate. French President Emmanuel Macron visited Maly to boost Western backing for a regional anti-jihadist force, with France urging greater support for the Sahel region amid mounting insecurity. The so-called G5 Sahel countries south of the Sahara, Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania and Niger, have pledged to fight jihadists on their own soil with instability and Islamist attacks on the rise. French President Emmanuel Macron fully supports their efforts, but said that they have to bear fruit. Boko Haram jihadists kidnapped 37 women and murdered 9 other people in a village in southeastern Niger. It said the village has been singled out because it was known for its resistance to the jihadists. Around 300,000 people displaced by jihadist attacks have taken refuge in the region, which already grapples with grinding poverty. Arab states that cut ties with Qatar met in Cairo to discuss their next move in the Gulf diplomatic crisis after Doha said their demands were impossible to meet. Foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Egypt are holding the talks a month after they severed ties with Qatar, accusing Doha of supporting extremism. They said they regretted the Emirates' negative response to a list of demands to end the diplomatic crisis. Rescuers scrambled to locate survivors after an illegal gold mine collapsed in western Ghana, trapping at least 17 miners underground. The abandoned mine, which was more than 80 metres deep, caved in as miners were coming back to the surface. Ugandan pop star Bobi Wine, aka His Excellency the Ghetto President, won a landslide victory in a city by-election to become the country's newest lawmaker. The by-election in the teeming capital Kampala was called as a result of voting irregularities during last year's general election. For many, the 35-year-old embodies the struggles, frustrations and hopes of the young, poor and marginalised in a youthful nation whose often elderly rulers can seem dismissive of their plight.
After 27 years behind bars, Kenny Motsamai is free, except for a tag monitoring his movements. He was jailed for life for killing a white police officer in 1989, a crime he says was political.
I didn't feel remorse of killing that man. You see, there is no a white man that ever came to the government or to televisions and tell the people that, hi, people, this is a democracy. We are enjoying it, all of us. We were wrong to oppress you.
Kenny is fighting for the freedom of his struggle-era comrades while running his business. During apartheid's tumultuous end, the Pan-African Congress's armed wing opposed Nelson Mandela's pacifist policies. More than 20 years after that troubled era, hundreds of people, including PAC members, are still in jail.
It's an injustice for the legal system not to look at those cases afresh and anew and look at them as prisoners of conscience, because their activities were based on a belief that they were changing society.
Thato grew up visiting her father, Percy Chepape, in prison. An apartheid-era fighter, he was arrested in 1997 for violent robbery. She's baffled that Eugene de Kock, who was given 2 life sentences for involvement in an apartheid death squad, was pardoned in 2015. Thato fears that her father fought in vain.
Look at where we are now. It's so sad that all those people, including him, I feel like they sacrificed for nothing. Or maybe the time is still coming, I don't know. But at the way the situation is right now, it was really, really not worth it.
Despite a government programme to pardon offenders convicted of political crimes, out of over 2,000 applicants, only 39 have been released.
There's no electricity in the village of Mekwacha in southern Democratic Republic of Congo, yet its inhabitants produce paintings that sell for thousands of dollars. For generations during dry season, women have decorated their homes with pictures of daily life. When the head of a French cultural institute came across their art, he invited them to Paris, where they sold 8 of their pictures on canvas for $60,000.
Because of the painting, we were able to go to Paris and exhibit our works of art. I believe that in the future it could pay well. It will lead to other projects.
Thanks to their success, they've installed a water pump in the village. They also receive an income from a local tour operator, which brings curious tourists to admire their art. However, amid the country's ongoing political instability and unrest, tourists are few and far between.
Congo is vast. If there's a war in the north, that's 4,000 kilometers away. But in the south, there's no war. People go to Israel where there are attacks, bombs and everything. And they go there as tourists. There are thousands who go there.
Nearby, artisans make ornaments from the local mineral malachite. The arrival of Chinese entrepreneurs to the region boosted sales. But with few other visitors, the industry is struggling. Some locals hope they can turn the nation's disadvantages into selling points.
Someone arriving in a very beautiful 4x4, very hard-wearing, and you can try it out on a bad road. It's great getting stuck in the mud. Getting unstuck, it's already a kind of tourism.
In Mekwacha, construction is underway for painted huts for tourists to stay. As tourism stalls elsewhere, they hope to buck the trend by offering visitors an experience of village life and local colour.
Trainers on and muscles warm. It's 6 a.m. and 85-year-old Deidre Larkin is getting ready to run a half marathon in the South African winter. The grandmother holds the over 80 world half marathon record and has become a famous face in her Johannesburg suburb.
Well, people, as they pass me, because most people pass me, they greet me and say, hello, I saw you on Carte Blanche, or I saw you on television. Are you the person on television? But otherwise, you know, you don't really talk for any length of time because you need your breath for the running.
Deidre was diagnosed with osteoporosis 16 years ago. Despite trying biokinetics and yoga, nothing helped. Now, 7 years later, she can be found pushing 10 kilometers every day, thanks to her son's encouragement.
Well, I never thought about my age. I just wanted to run, so I ran. It's only with these people keep on saying, oh, you're old, that I kind of began to think of my age. But before then, I never thought of it. And I feel much more alive and much more, I got much more energy.
A former concert pianist, Deidre now gives piano lessons to school children with the same dedication and enthusiasm she puts into her running.
After lessons, sometimes usually very exhausted because it's a long lesson, but also what happens is sometimes she comes from motivational talks, and that reminds me that what she does, it just reminds me that I can do whatever I want to do because she's defying all odds basically.
Last year, Deidre participated in 65 races, including several half marathons. She hopes to continue running until her very last breath.
Africa's biggest horse race, the Durban July, attracted both fans of horse racing and fashion. And to mark the 120th anniversary of the race, fashionistas donned their most vibrant creations for the 2017 theme of the colour of magic. Next week on Africa Weekly, we head to Liberia, where young men and women are working as billboards with messages and slogans daubed on their bodies in paint. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.